Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, here in New York. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're following this next general session out there on the World Wide Web via SYS-CON TV, embedded into, I don't know, 2.4 million pages. Who knows? Up next, we're going to think about cloud at scale, which is what you are all thinking about. To help us with that is Dr. Angel Luis Diaz, VP of Software Standards in Cloud Labs, and this is at IBM, but high-performance cloud computing. That's what we're putting center stage now. So I'm not going to steal his thunder, but let's hear Angel on rethinking IT and reinventing business, no less, via the IBM SmartCloud. Take it away, please, Angel.
Thank you. Wow, applause. Applause before I even said a word. This is amazing. So look. For those of you who are watching outside, the room is a bit interesting. There's a lot of people over here. There's a lot of people over here. And there's a few people in the middle. So it feels a bit strange kind of standing here in front of no one when I have people to my left and right. So let's kind of keep this interesting. As I go through this, let's have a contest between the people on the left and the people on the right. If you're on the right, can you make a little bit of noise? Can I hear like applause or something? Thank you. All right. And the people on the left can make a little bit of noise. Oh! All right, so as we go through this presentation, just to keep it interesting, I will try to, have strategic points where I ask people on the left to do something and the people on the right to do something. All right, just to keep it, spice it up. It's like, what, 4:30? We're all thinking about dinner, right? So look, thanks for joining me here. Thanks for coming. This has been a great event, a lot of really interesting talks. I spend my days thinking about cloud and innovation in the cloud, and I spend a lot of time in open source communities and standards. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. But I also spend my days or my nights or when I'm not sleeping, working with clients on high-performance cloud computing, kind of where the rubber meets the road. And what I'd like to do in this presentation is kind of give you a perspective of what's happening in the open source and standards world, and in particular, try to ground that in some real implementations that I've been through. I'm sure a lot of you all have been through. And then also try to do it from a different perspective each time, okay? Because, when you think about cloud, we kind of lump this into one big term, but cloud is really in the eye of the beholder, right? Someone who runs a data center, a platform engineer thinks about it from a certain perspective. An application developer might be thinking about it from another. Some CIO might have more holistic view of architecture. A line of business just wants the app out there, right? So I think it's important to understand what's happening in the industry, and certainly what we're trying to do in IBM with you all to kind of accelerate this market. And it's really interesting. When you look at it one hand, our line of business colleagues tell us, look, we need to leverage mobile. We need to leverage social. We need to do analytics. We need to kind of build applications faster, right? And you have all of these amazing statistics about, how many devices we will all have. 1.2 billion smartphones. I have 5 of them, right? You have like 6. I think I see you there with like 6 different devices, It's just amazing. But for those of us who live kind of in the data center world or who live in the IT world, get excited by some of this, but we also get a bit worried because we know about the realities of our infrastructures, trying to support all of those transactions, try to give our developers the agility they need to develop applications quicker, faster, et cetera. So it's this balance that we live in between excitement, trying to drive the art of the possible, innovating, right, but also managing our existing systems. And for those of us, no matter whether you're an application person or a data center person or a CIO, you spend a huge amount of your time, a huge amount of your, frankly, resources in maintaining what you got. There's only so much you have in terms of resources you can drive in innovation. So how do you start to do both, right? And what's really interesting about cloud, and no matter what perspective you take of this architecture, which I'll get into, it starts to allow you to balance that equation more equally. It starts to allow you to do more on the innovative side, right? Rethink how you do your business, reinvent your IT organizations, all right? And that's really what, as an industry, we're trying to do, and certainly what IBM has been trying to do. Now, let's go a little history lesson here. Let's start with, since the folks on the left won the initial contest, let's start here. If you remember back in the day when and it's funny to say back in the day, I don't know if I'm getting older or what's going on, but the mid-90s, it's not too long ago, right? In the mid-90s, you think about e-business and the web, HTML, right? We all know what that is, HTTP. Does anybody know on the left-hand side what was the use case for HTML, Tim Berners-Lee, as he was defining that standard, the web page form? What?
Scientific collaboration.
You're the first person in like 6 months who's got it. Thank you. We have to give this person something. Let's give them a round of applause, guys. Disseminating scientific information, and specifically physics, but yes, scientific. The use case for XML was the mathematical markup language, which I was co-chair of, by the way. Okay? Great use cases. Is that the primary use case for HTML today? Probably not, right? So as we've been evolving as an industry, okay, fueling these innovations, right? Because the web was born through open source. Service-oriented architecture, business process management, born through open source and standards. What's happening in cloud, innovation is being driven by open source and standards. The way we do things is very, very different than the way we used to do them in the past, okay? And that is extremely exciting. If you think about it, I say it's not your parents' standards in open source process anymore. Okay? The days of smart people getting in a room thinking about disseminating scientific information are over. End users, you all, people who use the technology, are very involved up front. And the potential for doing good, the potential of getting use cases right, is so much more now than what has ever been before. So when people ask me to draw these comparisons between the way the industry approaches standards in open source today versus in the past, I say it's very exciting because I can see the art of the possible before we even deliver it, because I see what we all want to do and where interoperability matters. Now, that's kind of the positive side of this equation. But let me give you another side for those of us who are technologists. For the first time ever, we run this survey in IBM where we ask CEOs and CIOs what are kind of the most important factors for them for success. For the first time, they view technology as a differentiator. So we should feel good, right? Particularly for those of us in cloud. We've arrived. Technology is a differentiator. A close number 2 is people skills. Usually, people skills and technologists don't kind of mix well, right? So what does that say? It says that us as technologists need to evolve as well, okay? The way we approach technology, the way we do development, the way we build our data centers, we can't just be DBAs or network people or app people. You need to understand what your peers are doing. Ever heard that word DevOps? I'll talk about that in a second. You need to kind of know what's happening across your silos, right? And furthermore, it would be great if you actually know a little bit about the business you're in as well, not just the technology. That's what we call T-shaped skills. So another thing that's different now than what back in the day in the mid-90s, I guess, was that as technologists, we're branching out. We're understanding a larger cross-section of architecture and a larger cross-section of the business. Now, on the right-hand side, make some noise if you know anything about the business you're in. That's a trick question. The answer should be yes. Your bosses are listening. All right, we'll have the names of the people on the right-hand side handed out to their bosses. All right, so now let's start getting to some specifics here. And let's do that from different perspectives. And the first perspective I want to give you is someone who runs, say, platform engineering, someone who runs a data center. And it's amazing, some of the statistics and some of the surveys and things that we run and other folks run, they talk about workloads. The number of workloads being put on clouds, whether it's a private cloud, public cloud, hybrid situation, is outpacing traditional workloads, which is amazing. And in fact, added to that, for those of us who care about networks, the network traffic is increasing. Now, you can view this as a glass half full kind of situation, or a glass half empty. I choose half full, right? I'm a positive person, right? You know, imagine if you're able to say, take the network priority of a packet and have that influence your workload placement, for example, right? Isn't that cool, with all that network traffic happening? Or imagine if I'm able to take my workloads and scale across my private cloud, public cloud, and so forth. And that's exactly what we're trying to do at the so-called infrastructure as a service layer. What's happening, and if you attended Danny Saba, who gave one of the keynotes session, he's talked about this emerging open architecture for cloud. You know, very simply speaking, when you think about cloud, you think about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service on a hardware, perhaps, right? It's one very simplistic way of doing this. You can cut this and slice this lots of different ways. But, you know, at the infrastructure as a service layer, we're starting to really understand what it means to have software-defined everything. Software-defined networks, open source to deal with interoperability at the infrastructure as a service layer, and give the folks who are doing platform engineering, people who run data centers, the ability to deal with their workloads. And by the way, there's a cultural aspect to this. I was talking to someone, they said, I'm tweeting, you got to give me a soundbite. So here you go, you ready? Here's your soundbite. Soundbite number 1. Maybe I had others, but soundbite number 1. This is all about dealing with the server huggers. You ever hear tree huggers? Right? So people who love their servers. And guess what? I love my servers. I run a data center in Silicon Valley. I have got amazing machines, right? But you have to let go. You have to understand that you can get economies of scale if you can let go of your servers and virtualize, okay? So to do that, there are 3 really important open source and kind of standards initiatives that I'd like to highlight that we're driving and that we're putting into our products. And don't worry, I'll talk about our IBM products if you're all concerned about that. I'm sure you are. I'll get into that. I'm a terrible sales guy. I just talk about the technology. So let's start with number 1, end users. I said it's not your parents' standards process anymore, right? So how can you get involved? What if you want to start driving requirements into the standards and open source communities, but you don't know how to do it? There's something called the Cloud Standards Customer Council, cloudcouncil.org. It's got over 400 end users involved who are talking about interoperability and driving requirements into the different standards and open source communities that are happening. It's a great place for you all to start your kind of journey around interoperability. So I encourage you to go and get involved. It's free, by the way, to join. You don't have to pay anything. It's funded by vendors who want that kind of interoperability, IBM being one of them, obviously. And let me tell you, they've delivered really, really interesting use cases, interoperability documents, everything from practical guides on how to get started with cloud to what's your best approach for interoperability with service level agreements to how do you do security. And let me tell you, it is mind-bending when you, for example, the security working group, have someone from Boeing co-chairing a working group around cloud security and interoperability with someone from Kroger, which is a supermarket chain. Very different security concerns and very different use cases, right? In the supermarket business, it's all about throughput. You wouldn't believe it, but it's all about how quickly you can get you out of that line, okay? And there's a whole set of security constraints that they think about there in their infrastructure. Boeing, it's all about keeping the plane up, right? So it's a great place to kind of work with your colleagues. And by the way, you can take a lot of this stuff, bring it back into your own organizations and be a hero, right? So, hey, look what I've worked with my colleagues. So it's a great place to get started. Now, 2 pieces of technology that I'd like to talk about. One is OpenStack. Anyone heard of something called OpenStack? Yes. Well, very good. Let me give the folks on the right an opportunity to redeem themselves. Can you make some noise if you heard something about OpenStack? Ah, there you go. You see you guys on the left. I'll give you a chance. Don't worry. We'll get there. You'll get your chance. The guys in the middle, they're just left. The 3 people in the middle, you should have sat in one of the 2. So I'm sorry. You're non-factor. You don't count. Sorry. You know, it's amazing. I remember talking to my friends in Rackspace and NASA about a year and a half or so ago. You know, OpenStack was 2 cats, a dog, and a great user community. Right? That's pretty much what it was. They'd be a very vibrant community, but closed, a closed kind of community, somewhat controlled by a couple of vendors. And back at one of their user conferences, you know, Rackspace kind of stood up and said, look, you know, we want to create an open community and see if we can get some energy here. And we worked, IBM, me personally actually worked with Rackspace and about 8 other vendors, and we kind of announced the formation of an OpenStack Foundation, right? A year and a half later, I couldn't have imagined where we are now. OpenStack has over 10,000 developers, and it is larger than Linux. It is a larger open source activity than Linux. Let me just repeat that, right? That is huge. I couldn't, in my wildest dreams, I couldn't have imagined that, right? And it is an amazing mix of end users who care about just using the stuff and making sure that they get interoperability at this infrastructure as a service layer, right? And developers. The last design summit, which was at Portland, had about 3,000 or so developers. The next one is in Hong Kong. They expect 4,000 to 5,000 developers to show up. And this is an open source conference, right? So if you haven't heard about OpenStack, which I think you probably have, I recommend you get involved in some way. Now, why do we care? Why did we help stand up the OpenStack Foundation? Why is IBM? We're in the top 3 contributors of code to OpenStack. And by the way, we had to earn our stripes, right? It's a meritocracy. We had to go in and get elected and to be a contributor and all this. Well, it's real simple. Going back to you, back in the e-business days, right? When you go to, say, IBM.com or some other site, you don't worry that your page is not going to come back, this HTTP request response, because it's every major application server vendor, whether it's IBM's WebSphere or some other competitors, right, uses the same Apache HTTP code inside of it for request and response. It's not rocket science, okay? You know, most people write it now in their first year in college, okay? So why not use the exact same code? That's the ultimate in interoperability. So for cloud, that's what we want. We want that same effect, the heart, that basic interoperability around workloads and images and storage and compute to be the same as well. So you don't have to worry about this. So if you have an image, you can run it in your private cloud. You can move it to a public cloud like IBM SmartCloud Enterprise. Or you could have it, say, an integrated system with PureSystems, which is our integrated hardware and software. And not just our own technology, but also competitors' technologies. So you can move their stuff, their images onto our workloads, into our systems. That's good. It could also go the other way, right? Now, why do we do that? Why aren't we proprietary? Well, look, cloud is still, as a market, is growing. We want the market to grow like the e-business market grew. And we feel that we can compete on our products and our offerings. The bigger the market, the faster you guys can get value from something, the more, frankly, that we can help you with technology and services and hardware, right? That's our thinking, okay? That's why we're not proprietary. And at this point, all of the major vendors, except maybe 1 or 2, are involved in OpenStack. Lots of implementations out there. I'm sure you heard about them at this conference. And it's a really, really great place to be in the industry. But it doesn't stop there, okay? I think of a Maslow hierarchy of needs. All right, people on the left, and I'll look at the person who knew the HTTP question. Do you know what the Maslow hierarchy of needs is for psychology? I know we're IT people, but you do? Excellent. So make some noise if you know what it is on the left. All right, very good, very good. Oh, there was a whistle. You whistler over there. You got to do it better next time. I like the whistles. So the Maslow hierarchy of needs is it's like humans. You need food. You need shelter. That's at the bottom. Once you have that, you can go to the next level. I need a nice car or whatever the next level is, right? There's these, as you progress. So cloud interoperability is like that. You need to have interoperability at the image layer. Is that something else to tweet? You're tweeting that, aren't you? Great. I got to be careful what I say. This just stays with us, right? This is just us. Right? We're not taping this, are we? Okay. There's this clock that's giving me stress. It's like showing me how much time I have left. And So when you think about it, we're just scratching the surface, okay? I was talking about VM image interoperability. What about the workload that runs on that image? The application, the database, the life cycle, how you maintain it, how you do upgrades, how you do migrations, all those types of things. There's a standard we're working on out of a group called Oasis with about 60 other vendors called TOSCA for defining interoperability of those workloads. And guess what? The standard's already been ratified, and folks are doing implementations, which is a great place. So what that means is that you start to be able to have your workload, not just the image, be interoperable. Okay? And that's wonderful for hybrid situations, where you can have part of your workload running, say, the web tier on a public cloud, and some of the transactions running on a private cloud or something like that, right? Having standards around what defines the workload is kind of the next layer after image interoperability, right? Now, let's continue moving up this, this hierarchy and look at things from the perspective of a software engineer, a developer, okay? On the right side of the house, make some noise if you care about developers. Not a lot of, oh, okay, a lot of platform engineering people. All right, that's good, that's fine. I do both, so developers, right? If you think about it, firms that actually have good discipline around development and operations are far more effective than those that don't, okay? And there is kind of a new kind of application paradigm that's evolving. It's being driven by applications like big data and cloud, big data and mobile. But it's also being driven by, you know, the fact that the infrastructure can be so easily attainable through cloud. That you can stand up a dev test environment. That you can have quick traceability between a defect in a source control system and an actual log from a running application, okay? And this new paradigm that's kind of evolving is happening in this platform as a service layer. And it's a composition, it's almost like a fabric of standing up different runtimes, right? People talk about polyglot programming or API-driven programming, right? Really what it's about, let's say I want a WebSphere Liberty J2EE runtime working with a MongoDB NoSQL data store, right, to develop a mobile application quickly. Let me put that thing into production and let me make changes quickly, right? That's what's starting to happen. The ability to stand up these runtimes quickly, put them down, bring them up, orchestrate them. This is this new kind of paradigm that's occurring. It's very exciting, and the kind of the feeling I get is very similar to where we were with OpenStack about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So when we're here together, and hopefully all of you will sit in the left or right and no one in the middle, so you guys in the middle don't feel bad, right? When we're here, say next year, we'll probably be having a very different dialogue about this, right? Because this is kind of the next space that folks are moving to, right? As the infrastructure is becoming more clear. In fact, IBM just had an announcement around some support that we have for MongoDB. Does anybody know what MongoDB is, guys on the left? Yes, very good. See, they did the hand raise, which is equivalent to making noise, just raising hands. No. MongoDB is a great example of one of those communities, those open source communities that have a lot of the sustainability characteristics. Good code, good end user community, right? So we actually now support the JSON protocol, the MongoDB protocol on top of JSON, for accessing NoSQL and relational databases for you to create your applications. So what's happening at this layer is what I call a reduction of concept count, okay? You guys familiar with the O'Reilly books? Guys on the right, O'Reilly books with the little cute animals? Excellent. Well, I want to reduce the number of books you need to buy or read in Starbucks. I guess nobody reads anymore. Sorry, not Barnes & Nobles. Nobody reads in bookstores anymore, right, like me. But I'm trying to reduce those numbers of books, right? So by having a common way of accessing both relational and non-relational data, whether you're at a web tier or a back-end tier, JavaScript everywhere, right? We're reducing the concept count. And what that does is it allows you to build applications faster. Okay? So if you haven't played with Mongo, I recommend you do that. Another part of the announcement that we made was that we're going to be creating a community very similar to what we did in OpenStack around Mongo. So that's a really, really exciting thing to do. The Mongo folks have a conference here in Manhattan. I think it's next week. So if you're around, I recommend you check it out. It should be interesting. Another part of this, though, when you think about this area, another set of use cases that's driving this platform as a service kind of explosion that's occurring is what we call systems of interaction. So what is that? Well, that's the combination of your transaction systems, your systems of record, with mobile applications, systems of engagement, right? And then, of course, this Internet of Things, all of the devices and so forth. And so there's some interesting standards and protocols happening there on the device side. And there's something called MQTT. MQ is a pretty popular messaging system that IBM has. MQTT is a way of extending and doing high-performance, reliable messaging at scale for smaller devices. In fact, anybody use Facebook Messenger? Some of you do. Guys on the right? No? OK. Guys on the left? Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, it doesn't matter. That was a trick question. They use MQTT to implement that for reliable messaging. Okay? So I recommend you check on that. If you want to start playing with some of these technologies today, IBM has a tech preview called Bluemix that you can go check out. And at the end of this presentation, I'll have little codes that you can go to, all these places I'm telling you to go look at. There'll be a slide that has the URLs to where to go, okay? But there's a thing called Bluemix that actually starts to bring these technologies together. You can go check them out. So let's look at cloud now from the perspective of a line of business executive, right? Any line of business, I'll ask this to the entire room. Is there any line of business executives here? The crickets, Crickets, no one, all right. Does anybody interact with the line of business executive, whether they have to or not? Yes, you're forced to, right? Okay. Well, what do they think about, right? Well, they think about, using software, using cloud as a competitive differentiator, right? And in fact, they know that if they can use technology as a competitive differentiator, they have an advantage. Quicker time to market, more, flexibility as to kind of, what their clients want, and they're able to reach their clients in any different way that they want to, okay? And now we're starting to move into this higher part of the architecture, the software as a service area, or what I like to focus on is I call kind of the face of cloud. How you interact, the applications, the mobile-first approach to how you build applications. And guess what? Open is important there, too. HTML is huge. HTML5. Does anyone know who are the co-chairs of HTML? Who's one of the co-chairs of HTML? This is a trick question. If I'm going to ask it, should obviously it's us. It's IBM. And people say, well, why is IBM a co-chair of HTML? You guys don't make a browser. Why do you care? We like physics information? No. I mean, we do. but it's because we care about the ability to have cross-device applications, right? Whether it's an iPhone, an Android, an iPad, it doesn't matter. You want to be able to build your applications and run them. In fact, the majority of applications today are using HTML5 as the way of building cross-device applications. And they use an open source initiative called Apache Cordova as the runtime that binds it to the device-specific things, like the camera, GPS, and that kind of stuff, right? And by the way, that reduces concept count. You deliver your applications quicker. You have protocols like MongoDB, JSON protocol, which reduces concept count. JavaScript on the client, JavaScript on the server, reduces concept count. And you're able to do what the line of business wants, which is iterate, deliver applications to their clients any way they want it. In an international way, because we don't live in the US, right? And on any device and however they want to consume it, okay? And guess what? Security is important too, though, right? So there's standards in open source like something called OAuth. Ever heard of OAuth? Right? OAuth is a protocol that's used very commonly for authenticating in the client. And just recently, IBM helped that protocol work also for performing transactions in the back end. Okay? Now, as you start to kind of weave this line, this thread between, if you think of these layers as, you know, let's imagine I have a thread in my hand, and I've got these little disks on the, 3 disks, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. You want to start to kind of tighten the thread and have those disks line up, right? You want people who write applications at these different layers to start working together. And this is this discipline of DevOps, okay? And I can tell you that the CIO spends a whole lot of time thinking about that thread. Your bosses, right, or if you're a CIO, you, spend a whole lot of time about how you can satisfy not just the line of business, but how you can kind of help to improve on that thread. And also, they also realize that, you know what, they can out-innovate the world. And guess what? I'm not as arrogant to think that we can out-innovate the world either. That's why we do so much in open source. So open technologies is critically important to them. So what they do is they start to think about these different layers of technology, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, and they think about how they can enable integration across all of these different open source communities or products that use open source. And that's the discipline that folks call DevOps, or lifecycle, right? And there's a really interesting standard there that just moved into OASIS called OSLC, Open Services for Lifecycle Collaboration. I recommend you check that out. A lot of folks are implementing it, but what it does is it allows you to better integrate these different layers and these different applications, and it allows you to stay within the tools that you're using. So hopefully, up to now, you've gotten a good sense of technically what's happening in cloud from an open source and standards perspective, from different perspectives, from the perspective of a person who runs a data center, from the perspective of an application developer, from a line of business person, from a CIO, and what's happening in the industry. It's a really exciting time to be in right now. And for us in IBM, we are using, and we're not just participating and helping lead a lot of these things, but we're using this stuff in our products. So if you want to use our IBM, our private cloud offering, it's our IBM SmartCloud Foundation, and it's got that technology in there. If you want to start to optimize hardware and software, right, for high-performance computing or for workload optimization, we have a PureSystems line that you can use. Or whether you're using our public cloud or SmartCloud Enterprise. And what we are allowing to do today is allow you to have the ability to move your workloads across all of them. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about each of these offerings, and then also spend a little time, because I only have about 10 minutes or so. The clock is in my face. Spend a little time on some best practices and how to get started. Okay? So first of all, the SmartCloud Foundation. So this technology, by the way, has OpenStack inside of it today when you get your SmartCloud Foundation. Think of it mostly as an infrastructure as a service and this kind of workload notion that I spoke about that allows you to create your private clouds. It allows you to integrate with public clouds and deal in hybrid situations. But what's very interesting about this is that it also allows you to orchestrate existing clouds that you have. So think of it as the kind of the cloud of the clouds. Because the reality is that you have lots of different cloud environments today. You might have some stuff that you've been working on. I mean, look, cloud is not new. We've been doing virtualization for a while, right? And you want to be able to orchestrate those as well. So it's got some really neat type of kind of orchestration technology, because if you could think of as running a data center as a business process, right? You can describe your business processes. You can leverage chef recipes to stand up runtimes. And that's the kind of capability that you have here. But also, sometimes, you want to be able to have, your applications finely tuned for specific deployment environments, specific network configurations, specific workloads, and so forth. And we have a line of integrated hardware and software. Our Pureflex, our Pure Application, our Pure Data, right? That is essentially almost, think of it as cloud in a box. And it scales up and it scales down. You can roll these things into your, in fact, I have done this in my team. I roll them into my data center, and 4 hours later, you're up and running, okay, which is pretty amazing. That's network, production, everything, from the moment it rolls in, okay? And so folks might use that. But you can, again, scale your workload from your private cloud using your farm of stuff to an integrated system, or our public cloud offering, our SmartCloud Enterprise. And then I think there's been a little bit of news lately about a company called Softlayer. Anybody hear of Softlayer? Left, make some noise if you heard of Softlayer. All right. Right, make some noise if you heard of Softlayer. Much better, much better. Okay, well, you see, left, you guys got to wake up. Am I boring you? I need to ask better questions? Okay. Softlayer is a great kind of addition to our family. They're based out of Dallas, Texas or so, about 700 employees. Got 21,000 clients, okay? And they're a public cloud offering, and they allow you to stand up quickly and very customizable the type of cloud environments you want to have. They support already the OpenStack Swift implementation. They're working on more OpenStack support. For me, as a gamer, it's also quite interesting because they host a huge number of game companies as well. So if you look at kind of the combination between our enterprise capability and kind of the markets that they go after, it's a great kind of partnership. So we look forward to this, and frankly, what this is doing, this allows us to enter new markets. It allows our clients to enter a new different space and vice versa. It also allows us to continue with what we're doing around OpenStack everywhere and creating an ubiquitous infrastructure as a service platform. So this is another kind of step in that direction as we move towards interoperability. And of course, we provide actual services that folks can use, whether it's commerce or smarter cities or analytics, social business. There's lots and lots of very specific, kind of more packaged type of services that folks use and leverage running on our clouds. Let me just say a word about social business for a moment. What is that? It's the application of social tools and techniques to your business processes. Just think about it. Just think about a traditional business process, like your travel business process, very linear. Do A, B, C. Renee has to approve something for me, and then it goes back. But what if Renee, just kind of picking a random person, Renee, is not in the office, right? That's an exception in that process. And it's very tough for traditional workflow systems to manage this type of ad hoc flow. But if you think of your business process more of as a state machine or as a social entity where you can be much more ad hoc and you can leverage kind of, Renee's boss, Scott, who might be around, get him to approve something, right? Then you're able to be much more efficient. So social business is fundamentally changing the way you do business. And cloud, the application of cloud to support these social interactions, right, to use social technology in improving business is accelerating your ability to do so. And this is a really, really exciting area of growth for us and where a lot of our clients are really, 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 really going, where they're applying this stuff. Now, we don't do any of this stuff alone, okay? We certainly work very hard in the open source and standards community, but we work equally or more hard with our partners, whether it's infrastructure providers, application providers, services and solution providers, technology, cloud builders, you name it. We've got lots of partners, and we welcome more. So this is the moment in the presentation where I say, hey, look, if you're not working with us, please do. Right? Please come and talk to me after this, and we'll find some way of working together, because there's just so much good we can do, and we're just at the beginning of this cloud journey. In fact, we have over 9,000 successful cloud transformations. And it feels like I've been involved in every single one. I'm just kidding. But that's a lot, all right? And there is a whole bunch more going. And I know, I know for a fact, because I've done one or two of these presentations, although I'm a little shy. I don't like speaking in public. I know that all of you are in different points in your journey, okay? Some of you are just starting. Some of you, are kind of way down the line, right? And it's kind of like a camping, a hiking trip. Everybody been on a hiking trip? Guys on the left, you've been on hiking before? All right. Guys on the right, have you been hiking? Yeah. Oh, okay. More people on the right been hiking. You guys have got to get on the plan, gaining too much weight, all right? Start working out. It's like a hiking trip. The first 10 minutes, you're excited, but like 10 minutes into it, oh, this backpack is so heavy. Oh, I need to go home and just watch a movie and drink some cold beverage of some kind, right? But then you reach a certain milestone and you feel good again. You get your second wind and your third wind and your fourth, and you're into it. And that's the way it is with a lot of IT projects. And what I'd like to do is give you a couple of pieces of advice in your hiking trip, okay? Number one, start with a project that you know can be done, can be implemented, and that has high visibility. I know that sounds obvious, but I have seen so many people start with the biggest computer science project on earth as their first cloud implementation, or are doing something which is completely irrelevant to anybody. It's a waste of time. You find that one that kind of hits both, all right? Because what happens is that you'll get some success, right? And you can move that project into a more sophisticated program. And then what you do is, number two, going back to tweetable moment number one, when you do it, involve the server huggers. Don't alienate them. Get them involved. Because there are skills to be had, there are things to be done in cloud. Okay? So involve your biggest naysayer and get them in there to work with you, to deliver on that implementation. Okay? That's kind of advice number two. Advice number three. As you assemble your team, okay, of folks across the business to do this, be very clear on metrics. What does success mean? And what does overachieving mean? Because I'm not an overachiever. No. Yes. What does it mean to be successful? And get that real clear, okay? Because you want to be over-successful as you drive change in your organizations, all right? And of course, number four, build your cloud on open technologies, okay? When you have a choice, you have choices across these different layers, whether you're a data center person, an application person, a CIO, a line of business, you've got choices. You could use a vendor that is proprietary. That could work. You could use a vendor that's open. That's better. Because the vendor who uses open technologies will out-innovate everyone. Because they're using innovation from the world. All right? Those that aren't are going to have a problem. That's my advice. And of course, the last one, wear sunscreen when you go to the beach. That's a good advice, too. All right, so look, here are some links to what I said. OpenStack, Cloud Standards Customer Council, the TOSCA, the tech previews for Bluemix, and SmartCloud Foundation, SmartCloud Orchestrator. Now, what I'd like to do now is, okay, because everybody usually claps at the end, hopefully. I like the guys on the left. Can you, if you like this little presentation, can you please clap? That was good. That was good. Thank you. Guys on the right, can you beat that, please? Much better. Much better. And guys in the middle, you can do a little noise too. Look at that. They beat you all. All right. Thank you very much. I think there's opportunity for questions if anybody has any questions.
There's always an opportunity for questions at Cloud Expo. You know that. And I love the applause for the man who makes 5 o'clock feel like about 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you so much for that, Angel. Who has a question? It could be from your peeps over here. One right there.
Very simple question. Can we get a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely. The PDF will be available with the conference site.
The highest compliment you can pay any speaker is, of course, to want his slide deck. Anyone over there? Now he's bonded with you all. Oh, no, they're bonded out. And what about over there? Was this the right or the left? They applauded like crazy. Why was that? Can I just make a housekeeping announcement that we're just going to scan your badges as you go out, if that's all right, so that
well, hey, thank you, everybody, for attending again. This is a
Thank
great
you
time.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Angel, thank you, IBM. Thank you, SmartCloud. And as I say, if you just wouldn't mind us just...